Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that leads you to developing great critical thinking skills. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden, and I'm a parent. It is Thursday, December 27th, and welcome to episode number 48. What is the recommended timeline to take the ACT or SAT? In the news this week, 3 key skill sets for workers in the year of 2030. We are in chapter 48 of 171 answers, and we're talking about the recommended timeline for taking the ACT or SAT. And this week's bonus content segment is all about what happens when a school requires a child's non-custodial parent to complete the non-custodial parent profile and they refuse to submit the documents. And stay tuned for Mark's interview with Miss Carol Conchar. She's the Director of Admissions at George Washington University, and she's dishing out some sound advice for music majors.
Anika, I want to just give a shout out to all of the college counselors out there. All the people that do placement. You know, when we first named our show, Your College Bound Kid, I think we were mostly thinking about parents and some kids listening, but we got this great email from a college counselor in San Francisco recently, and she said, you know, I almost overlooked your podcast because I'm pretty knowledgeable about college admissions, and when I saw Your College Bound Kid, I figured it was pretty elementary, but I'm really glad I listened and because I learned so much. And then we had so many letters from counselors. And so I just want to give a shout out to all the counselors in the trenches doing the work, taking the arrows coming at your head because you have to tell kids that, you know, we probably need to look at another school that you have a better chance of getting in, and all the challenges and the joys that come with this great work. And just wanted to shout them out on Christmas week, which is Christmas week. What are you doing for Christmas, Anika?
I'm going to the big Virginia. My sister-in-law's there.
I'm going to Virginia too, but for New Year's.
Are you? Oh, so we'll be switching out.
yeah, exactly.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right, Mark, this week's article, it is 3 key skill sets for workers in the year of 2030. And we're finding this in the World Economic Forum. It's written by Mr. Adam Jezard. And what this is, it's a report from the McKinsey Global Institute. It's a report that's highlighting how they think the range of jobs based on human skills will be likely affected by artificial intelligence and automation. And essentially what it's doing is it's emphasizing the 3 key skill sets that it says workers need to develop between now and the year 2030. If they don't want to get left behind. So I'm just going to quickly highlight the top 3 here. And Mark, I wonder if this is making the case for higher education. I'm not sure. That's the question.
Most definitely.
This is a question I'm going to ask you, right? So we're looking at, so what they're saying is that these folks here, you had better up your skills and first of all, your higher cognitive skills, meaning your advanced literacy and writing, your quantitative and statistical skills, critical thinking. They go on to soft skills, mostly meaning social and emotional. And these are advanced communication and negotiation and empathy. And the third one that they highlight is that technology. And they're saying this basically 2030 is going to embrace anything from IT skills to data analysis to engineering and research. And so, Mark, when I was reading this, I was thinking, well, this is I feel like this is where we are now. But I believe what this article is saying is that the lower level skilled jobs are here, but it could be it could go so bad as to, you can be in a minimum wage and by 2030 it could be no wage, meaning that automation will take over. So you had better go in triple time in terms of focusing on these higher skills. What do you think?
Yeah, most definitely. This is a warning sign of where things are going. And as you're correct, we're already on this trajectory, but it's going to just accelerate. A couple other things in higher cognitive. One of the other things is complex information processing. And with social, emotional, and soft skills, learning continuously and learning to manage others and be adaptable. And so this is really, really important because, McKinsey Group, they do serious research. So this is not some person just decided to just Google a few things and write an article, right? This is based on
Right.
copious amounts of research. And so just to continue to add, I'm going to read a little bit more than I normally do. Is that okay from the article?
Yes, that's all right.
All right. So here's some of the things that they say. Demand for higher cognitive skills such as creativity, critical thinking, decision-making, complex information processing will go through 2030 at cumulative double-digit rates. The growing need for creativity is seen in many activities, including developing high-quality marketing strategies. The rise in complex information processing, meanwhile, is related to the need to be aware of market trends and the regulatory environment that affects companies' operations. The need to understand customers, technical of company products and services. So what they say here is that demand for these higher cognitive skills in the U.S. is going to rise by 9%. So that's an area where there's potential for jobs if you have that skill set. But then they go on to say the soft and emotional skills will rise in the U.S. by 26%. So 52 billion hours were worked in 2016, and in Western Europe, 26% increase expected in Western Europe as well. Now, McKinsey, being international, they're not just looking at it's a global study. They're not only looking at the U.S. So it's kind of nice to know these skills are really worldwide skills, not just U.S. skills in case somebody wants to go overseas. But then they go on to say technological skills is actually where there'll be the biggest increase by 2030. And they're expected to be a rise of 60%. So right now, there are 31 billion hours worked in 2016, and a 52% increase is expected in Western Europe. And then they say competition for high-skilled workers will increase, the report says, while displacing or losing or moving jobs of insufficient work, as you said, due to AI, artificial intelligence, and automation. Is going to really hit the low-skilled workers. And as you said, it says this is a continuous trend that's going to continue to exacerbate. So, this is usually where you ask me questions, Anika, but I'm going to ask I'm going to ask you one. So what do you think is the so what for our listeners when they hear about this report?
Well, I think, first of all, one thing we haven't mentioned yet are some of the examples of the careers that they
Yes.
highlight in each of those areas, right?
Yes.
So, for example, technological, they highlight
Yep.
engineers and robotics and scientific experts. Cognitive, they talk about
Right.
doctors and accountants and writers and editors. So, not to say that we've got to all just pick one of those and go after them, but we do need to be cognizant of where the trend is going, right? But it also
Well, I think they expanded beyond that. They talked about marketing and they talked about,
Yeah, for sure.
creativity.
I just called out a few. I just called out a few. But my point is that don't just look at this article and say, "Oh, I've got to do one of these 12 things," right?
Right.
But it also
Right.
reminded me of the Occupational Outlook Handbook that we talked about before, and oh my God, it just refreshed me on how excited I am about that darn handbook, and I need to revisit it again because it does show you specifically and it drills down on each of these, right? So you might look at this and say, okay, well, actually, I do want to be an accountant, or actually, I do want to be a robotics person. Sources like the Occupational Outlook Handbook you can go to, and they outline how you get to achieve those guys, like in extreme detail. So it's just, it's all intertwined together. And the big takeaway is awareness, right? I think, what we mentioned earlier is the case for higher education. And that may not be a 4-year institution, but it may be a 2-year. It may be, I don't know what it has a variety of what it could look like, right? But we just got to know how urgent, like there's a sense of urgency around where we're going, especially with this automation of stuff. And, just think about the number of workers out there who do these low skill jobs and how they're going to be profoundly affected, not just them, but their kids and their grandkids. Cause a lot of the stuff is generational, you kind of pass some things down. So, awareness, I think, is my big takeaway, Mark.
And I have a couple others very similar to that. So starting like with you said, self-assessment, right? Take a look at your skills as well as your interests and look at how they line up with the jobs of the future. And this article helps you know what skill sets are going to be required, as well as you said, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, another fantastic source. Then you want to select a major that reflects both your interests and your skills and the jobs of the future. Then you want to take a look when you're looking at a college, you want to look at how they develop that. How does their pedagogy reinforce that skill set? I had a session with a new client yesterday, and I just actually rolled out the list of schools in the family meeting, mom, dad, and the student list of schools I recommended. And then the dad, shout out to Alvin, he said something I really liked. He said, of all the schools you gave me, which of these does the best at developing critical thinking skills for my daughter? I thought that was great, because you want to look for a place that teaches you how to think, not just what to think,
Right.
but how to think.
Right.
Very, very important. Then you want to work extremely closely with the career center at the school that you're looking at. You should be evaluating career centers as one of the things you consider when you're looking at a college, by the way. But you want to work very closely with the career center and have a job strategy. Let's see, what's today? We're recording this on what day? I'm losing track of my days.
Christmas Eve. Oh my goodness.
Oh, geez, Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve. So it was a week ago on the 17th. I had a meeting with one of my students who's actually a senior in college. Hadn't seen her in a while. It was so exciting to see her. And shout out to Kyra. And she masterfully did this job strategy thing. So she spent 12 weeks between her sophomore and her junior year at Boca Raton, interning down there. She's a supply chain management major. And then her junior year, between her junior and senior year, she goes down to Texas Instruments and works for 12 months. And at the end of her junior year, they offered her a job.
Nice.
Now she still hasn't graduated from college. She graduates in May, but she already has it lined up. They like, go back, finish your last year, graduate, come back here, you'll have a job.
Awesome.
So in addition to all of the self-assessment, implementing the plan, you got to have a career plan as well.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
We are looking at the question of what is the recommended timeline for taking the ACT and the SAT. It is chapter 48 in the book I wrote called 171 Answers. And it's an important question because people want to know, when do I start this thing? Do I start, 3 months before I take the test? Do I start in elementary school? I mean, what are your thoughts, Anika?
Well, let me start with that story in the chapter of that poor child and the mom, the sixth grader, who's like...
Why don't you tell our listeners the story in case they don't have the book?
So this woman is randomly testing her kid on the SAT, like hardcore, like they were about to go off to college. And so she thought she was doing a good thing. Mom's always in the best interest of what we think is the best interest of the child, and not. That was way overkill, right? But
she was young. She was a young one, wasn't she?
So not quite sixth grade is the point. But I was very I was happy that I reinforced that we were actually on track in terms of, so you're saying basically pretty much after the summer of the 10th grade year, high school year, and then going into the fall of the junior years, whereas we're exactly where we are with Janaea. And so here's the other thing too, when you talk about that, we want the testing to be done before the senior year. And I just know for years and years, I always thought that the senior year was just the time to take it. Like that was the time you were supposed to take it. I never thought that was an option, or I never knew that was an option, that you could take it before the senior year. So I wonder how many people are still in the dark as I was in terms of just getting that, being able to get that thing over with.
So I find that most students I work with, they don't necessarily think you have to take it in the senior year, but because of procrastination and bad planning, that's what they end up doing. But I do want to go all the way back, though. I really want to emphasize something which I feel is extremely important. Double underline, underscore, highlighter, neon highlighter, all that. That is, you can't really cram for the ACT or SAT and do nothing your whole life. Hire a pro, work hard for 6 months, and think you're going to have a stratospheric score. It doesn't really work that way. So I know, Anika, we talked about this a little bit a couple episodes ago about what you can do in advance to prepare, because it's really a lifetime of preparation that really sets you up to score exceptionally well. Right. But I want to just elaborate a little bit on what we said a couple weeks ago when we talked about this. I actually set up a meeting with one of my clients this year that just blew the test out of the water. I wanted to know exactly what they did. And they had a lot of good insights in talking with them. So it started with the fact that the dad and the mom actually required their daughter to read some writings from some writers that didn't even agree with them politically. They're pretty liberal politically, but they had read some conservative writers' columns all the time, George Will and Charles Krautenhammer. just because they have advanced vocabulary and higher level thinking. So this was being done at younger ages. This is 8th and 9th and 10th grade. Reading wisely, exposure to a wide range of vocabulary. On the math side, lots of math problems, math games, keeping it fun over the summer, keeping it fun, but lots of exposure to math, getting ahead in advanced work in math. So that's all the stuff that you do throughout your whole life so that you're actually preparing in a real natural way, but keeping it fun. So that's important. Now, when you get into the formal part of the prep, well, first of all, you got to make sure you're taking the right test, right? So go through the whole process. Have we talked about that in an episode yet, Anika? Or is that coming up? How to know which test?
No, yeah, we did that about knowing which one is better for you. Yep, for sure.
Yep. So you go through that process. Go back and check that episode if you didn't hear that we encourage you to do. So you got the right test now. And so now it's really important. And I see there's really 3 times that someone can officially and formally start and dive in. One thing I have been doing, though, Anika, recently, at the end of 9th is not a bad time. Summer of 9th, between 9th and 10th summer, it's not a bad time to actually take a full SAT and a full ACT. Just go back and then study and look at where you made your mistakes. That's all you really need to do, though, just to get a sense of what level I'm at right now. Okay, can I at least figure out from the answer grid why I made mistakes, or do I not know? Do I not know because I haven't been exposed to the material? Or is this an area of weakness? I've added that. So between 9th and 10th, just take a practice test, 1 ACT, 1 SAT. Now you can leave it alone. As far as when to start formally preparing, 3 times I found work. They're all very closely related to one another. One is between the summer of 10th and 11th. Okay, because some people, that's when they have so much time. I have one student that really prepared aggressively between 10th and 11th and really, really banged a nice score out. So that's a good time. Another good time is the fall of junior year, and another good time is January of junior year. So sometime basically between June of, the end of your sophomore year to January in your junior year, sometime in that 6-month period, that's the best time I've found to start your formal preparation. And why do you think I recommend that? Why that time, Anika?
I'm not sure about why. I mean, well, obviously we're closer to the finish line. We've gotten through a lot of key courses in our high school curriculum, right? I don't know. Let's just start there.
Well, you pretty much got it. So I do like students to be through Algebra 2 before they start, because there's so much Algebra 2, and it's really hard to do well on this test if you haven't had Algebra 2, or at least you're in the middle of it at a minimum. So you have a chance to have more content, exposed to higher level reading, you're more chance for brain development. And I don't want your high school to be consumed by test prep. I want you to be fun and be a teen, enjoy life, enjoy your extracurriculars, enjoy your friends, enjoy your classes. I don't believe in being consumed for test prep for 2 or 3 years. So as part of it is about being fun, being a kid, being a teen, and learning naturally. And part of it is about your brain development. And part of it is about you've already had the courses that you need to have to naturally learn. How's that sound?
That sounds great. But I do want to ask you a question. So when you were saying to take a full test in 9th and 10th grade, could the PSAT be counted as that formal test for the SAT?
So you can use your PSAT that way because it's so similar to the SAT. And at this point, it's more of a diagnostic, really. It's more of getting an early read. But that's if your school administers. So some schools administer the PSAT already, and if they do that, then that can count as your test. Okay. You don't even need to do this.
Okay.
And if you're in ACT land, then you'll be doing the pre-act. As this, you'll find that the PSAT gets administered more in SAT areas and the pre-act in ACT areas. And we talked about how some states are dominated by the ACT and some by the SAT. The reason why any of those 3 times, starting between the summer of 10th and 11th, starting in the fall, or starting in January, all work, is because all of them will allow you to get your test prep done before the start of the senior year. And people have to look at what other extracurriculars and responsibilities work or other things they're juggling and find the time that best works for their schedule, because they're going to need to dedicate a lot of time to this. And so that's why for some people it's the summer, for some it's the fall, and for some it's January. The reason why you want to get it done before the start of the senior year is because the senior year is going to be very demanding with a rigorous course load, as well as all the college information you're going to have to handle, whether it's just attending information sessions, going on visits, or doing applications. So you want to wrap up your testing by taking one test in the spring and then another one in the summer. If you're an ACT tester, that could be June or July. If you're an SAT tester, that could be June or August. And of course, plenty of practice tests in between.
Cool beans. Mark, it is the most wonderful time of the year, and it means it's bonus content week. Woo!
I thought you were going to start singing. It's the most
I started
wonderful
to,
time.
but it's kind of early.
Oh, you remember when I tried singing the other day? I played what
yes.
I played what you said to my kids. They just shook their head and said, "When are you going to learn?" But you know what? But it's so cool. We got this, so at KIP, they gave us like choice to get anything on Amazon, that we wanted for Christmas.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
I got this. Yeah, so I got this like ringing doorbell. It's so cool.
Oh.
And it like plays like 60 different tunes. So we have all the Christmas music on there. So anytime someone rings our doorbell now, it starts playing Christmas music.
Oh, go KIP. Y'all so sweet. Okay, sorry, we digress.
Yes, we sure did. How did we end up there?
So here it is, right? Bonus content. A school requires a child's non-custodial parent to complete the non-custodial parent profile, and they refuse to submit the document. Okay, Mark, I'm sorry. Wait, what? Like, what is happening in these cases?
All right, so let's take a step back because I feel like we're kind of in the weeds terminology here with non-custodial parent profile and all the stuff people sure may not know what we're talking about. So one of the things that people have to be aware of up front, and the biggest thing I want people to know about is this should be something you take into consideration when you're doing your college list building. It's extremely important to do it when you're doing your list building. If you are divorced or if you were never married and you apply to certain schools, then both parents, what we call the non-custodial parent, meaning the parent that the child primarily is not living with most of the time, the custodial parent being the primary person this child lives with. So the other parent. There are a number of schools that will require you to submit the financial information of, I hate to call them the secondary parent, but you know what I mean, right? Not the primary parent, right? The non-custodial parent. There'll be some schools that will require their financial information to be submitted. And before I go a little deeper, I'm going to ask you this. Why would they do that, Anika? Why would certain schools require the non-custodial parent to submit their financial information?
Well, I'm assuming because if they're contributing to that child or to that household in some kind of way, they need to know that. I mean, isn't that considered like part of the financial snapshot?
Yeah, and from a school standpoint, it's the biggest way in the world for a family to hide money, right? So you just have this non-custodial parent that says, I'm not submitting those forms. I'm not giving my financial information over. And I think I shared on this podcast before. Sometimes I forget what I tell my clients and what I say on this podcast, but I talked about a dad that made $400,000 and the mom made $65,000, and the son lived with the mom. And so it's a big difference in the financial picture if the school only sees the $65,000, not seeing the other $400K over here, right? And so schools are trying to assess your ability to pay with this financial information so they can appropriately charge the people that have the money what they should be charged based on their income and their assets. And so because it's the easiest way in the world for schools to hide, for a family to hide money, and because they do believe that, hey, both of you made that kid. I mean, I know God made it, but you know what I mean? Then you both have to contribute. And so, so that sounds, if you hear that in face value, you say, that sounds fair to me. But here's the problem. There's so many complex situations. This week, Anika, I'm working on 2 appeals because this is very, very common where, okay, what happens if, I hate to say this, but I'm going to use the dad for the example because normally the kid lives with the mom. Hate to be stereotypical, but this is statistically true. Normally the kid lives with the mom. Normally the mom's the custodial parent. Normally the dad's the non-custodial. Not always, but normally. So let's say the dad just will not fill out the forms and says, I'm not doing it. So what do you think happens in those cases, Anika?
I don't know.
So the most of the time, what's going to happen is the school is going to push back and they're going to say to you, we have to differentiate between willing and able. Willing and able. Able meaning they're capable of paying versus willing meaning they just choosing not to do it, right? So there's a big difference. Are you able to do it or are you not willing to do it? So some cases where someone may not be able to do it that will fall in the exception category could be imprisonment, incarceration. So you know where the parent is, but they're incarcerated. So they're going to exempt you out of that, right? Another case could be, I don't even know where the let's just say the dad. I don't even know where he is. I have no idea of his whereabouts. So there's been no contact at all. So those are cases where they will oftentimes make exceptions. But where they won't generally make an exception is if the parent just says, if there's any contact whatsoever, you know where the dad is, but he just says, I'm not doing it. And so when that happens, there's a couple things, and that happens a lot, by the way. I'm not doing it. The person hasn't been involved in the kid's life. So there's a couple of things you need to do. First of all, you need to know your school list. Right away, you can build your entire list of schools that only require the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA, which is what most schools require and only require, and they will only ask for the custodial parent information. So then you're fine. If all your colleges are FAFSA only schools, no problem. It's when you apply to these private schools that are wealthier schools that have a lot more money to give away and not more institutional money to give away. They are very protective of who gets their money. They worked hard to save that money up and fundraise, and they want to make sure it goes to the right people. There are 180 colleges like that, and 140 of the 180 require this non-custodial parent to complete this information. So one way to do it is if you apply to one of these schools, apply to the 40 that don't require it, because 40 of the 180 still operate the way the FAFSA does and say, you know what? We're going to ask for this more in-depth assessment of your financial resources, but we're going to exempt the non-custodial parent. Now I'm going to stop because I feel like this may be information overload. Are you following me, Nika, or is this kind of over?
No, that's good. And I was just, and I was going to ask you, but you cleared it up quickly in terms of how many schools are doing it and how many are. Whether it's common or not. So to know that it's more the private institutions is when and is that the CSS profile that we're talking about, or is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you fill out the CSS profile. It's the college scholarship search profile that's administered by the college board. They're the ones that require this additional form, which, by the way, is a much, much, much more accurate form. It really is. It's significantly more accurate than the FAFSA. So I understand why schools ask for it. There's so many ways in which it accurately captures the family's financial picture in a way that the FAFSA does not. And when you fill it out, so let's just say, Javon, don't be mad at me. I'm just using this as an example. Let's say that, Javon was a non-custodial parent. He wasn't in the home. You fill out and it requires the profile. So you fill it out yourself, right? One thing that people don't understand is you wouldn't actually see Javon's information in this case. What happens is you provide a link with his email, and the college board that administers it will send him everything. So it's not like each person sees the other person's information, because you can imagine in some dicey situations how that could get really ugly fast, right? Yeah.
Right.
But when somebody says, no, I'm not doing it, the one thing that I will say is there still is an appeals process. There is an appeals process, and it is worth going through that appeals process. In some cases are stronger than others. I'm helping, I said 2 just this week, and then I had another 2 weeks before that. I'm helping people through the appeals process. In the appeals process, the financial aid administrator or officer can exercise what's called professional judgment. Okay, because there can be situations where there was abuse, or there can be situations where, like, I think he might live in this state, but we haven't talked to each other in like 7 years, that they may deem, okay, you know what? We're going to say this is a situation where the person is not able. It's not a case of them not being willing, but also not able. So, but what I want people to know is, if you're in a situation like this, where you have a non-custodial parent, either through divorce or a never married situation, and you think they may not be willing to submit their financial information, then I implore you, I beseech you to take that into consideration on the front end and fill your list with lots of FAFSA only schools and use the schools that do not require the non-custodial profile. Because I'm on the phone with a college this week, and it is not easy to get out of this, Anika. So when I say they use professional judgment, it is not easy. I'm in a situation right now, student accepted early decision, and dad's not filling the form out, saying he won't do it, mad at the mom, because, she basically forced him to do child custody and got his wages garnished. So she's taking it out on the mom and not filling out for the kid. And the school is like, look, we'll give you an extension, but we got to have this. We're not going to release a financial aid package for your early decision admit. And so we're trying all kinds of things like call the grandma, call the mother of the dad, see if she can convince him to do it. Have the dad call the school so she knows this is not a thing. The mom's not trying to, exact leverage and revenge on you. Have the dad call and let us explain to him our policy. There's a lot of angles you can work. Some schools require it only for the first year and not all 4 years. So the most important thing that I really want our listeners to take away from this is if you know, and if you're in one of these situations, you should probably have a good sense of whether homeboy may not be willing to do that for him. And take that into or homegirl. Glad you clarified that because it's not only us, right? There's what do they call you? Right. I know we're deadbeat dads. What do they call you? Deadbeat moms?
No, we are a unicorn. We don't mess. Just say that comment.
Thanks for covering for me. So if you should know that other partner's ex-partner, whatever you want to call him, her, and please don't build your list with all schools that are going to require this form, because I'm telling you, Nika, when I have a situation like this, I feel like I get 10 more gray hairs every year added to me, because it is hard. It is hard getting schools to approve a non-custodial parent waiver. Like, I've been able to do it. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. It depends on the circumstances, depends how strict the school's policy is. But some schools are extremely strict if the child or the mom knows where that other parent is. Like, see, there I go with the mom again. I got a stereotype in my head, don't I? It's based in experience.
It's all good, but I tell you, right. I can't imagine knowing. Oh my God, my heart goes out to those kids that have to deal with that, because they just want to be great. They just want to be great.
And some of them, they get all the way through. They're admitted, and here's the thing. Usually the schools that require this, they're very selective. They're the wealthy, prestigious, in-demand schools. So normally this is a pretty high-achieving kid that's done well. I do want to make one slight correction. It's not only private schools. There are about 7 public schools in there that require this, but it's mostly private. Any thoughts? Any thoughts, Anika?
There it is. No, just take heed. Take heed, please.
Build your list with some schools on it that do not require that joker of a form. I am excited to have Carol Conchar back again on episode 19. She was our guest and spoke to us about opportunities in theater. And today she's back to talk about opportunities for students who want to study music.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Good evening, Carol.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I so appreciate you coming on here and sharing with our listening family the opportunities in the arts, because it's real specialized knowledge that you have, and the pathways for music and art and arts and film are very different than a traditional pathway. And so I just feel there's a real dearth of knowledge out there, and thank you for enlightening our listeners.
Sure. Happy to help.
So let's talk about a student that's interested in studying music, Carol. What do you recommend they do while they're in high school to prepare?
So the music student. Most likely started playing music later, elementary, most likely started in middle school when they introduced them to their first, band or concert band experience. And it's either a chore or the student takes to it right away. And the parents endure the concerts and all of that. But it's the student who really gravitates towards it. You see quick improvement, and they start asking for private lessons. So the private lessons component, which is the added cost, obviously, for the parents on top of the renting of the instrument, will also inspire them to maybe purchase the instrument, because eventually they will be needing to own it. The private lesson will reinforce what happens in that class, what they do in school. The earlier part of their music education experience won't really include much in terms of auditioning, or, maybe by 8th grade, they may move into things like first chair and all of that. And basically for the band director, that's the kid who knows the music most. It's not like, more than anything. For the student who's also interested in voice in those early years, maybe they started out with a little bit of church choir, things like that. Luckily, because of things like American Idol and, The Voice, we can tell when somebody sings well and somebody doesn't sing well.
This is true.
Just by listening to them. But you can kind of tell, like, wow, my kid sounds pretty good. But am I just being a stage parent? I don't know. Maybe not. And then, again, they can probably get a little bit of that guidance starting with, they can join chorus or choir or whatever in middle school. And then it will eventually guide them in their high school years. Marching band, when they're in high school, that's a big place for, both the talented and the mediocre music kid. But the most talented kids will start to emerge from those programs. The same thing that happens with those theater students: tenacity, drive, and resilience is going to be a part of this as well. Nobody is going to become the best sports person or the best at anything unless they practice. So if you find that it's not hard for you to push your kid to practice, then you probably have a kid who's talented in music for sure.
I am so much the antithesis of this. I was that kid whose mom made take piano lessons, and it was like watching paint dry. I hated it. Like, we just wrestled for years, and finally I won. She realized I'm spending all this money. I'm not making any progress with this young lad. And so I won that battle. But I know other kids who they can't get enough of it, just nonstop. I'm thinking of a couple students right now I'm working with. And so I love how you sort of keep reiterating passion as well as skill and talent. So let's talk about the conservatory versus a BFA program versus a BA with maybe a strong music faculty. Like, is that a decision that a student needs to make? And when would you recommend one versus the other?
Yeah, so the conservatory experience, which can happen in a college/university setting as well as just its own single entity, is probably the most intensive of the music experiences. It will kind of be like similar to what a visual art college would be like, meaning that the emphasis will be on the craft, on the practice, on the arts, with the academics being a small piece. There's even some programs out there, like the Curtis School of Philadelphia, which is free if you can get in, is no academics. It's just pure training.
Right.
But it's unique in that regard. And the most talented students will go through those kind of programs. And then of course, you're going to have the 1% that are just naturally talented who can become performers and paid well right from the start. So I think it's a matter of what the student's outcome, what they're looking for. The BFA program, the Bachelor of Fine Arts program, will be very studio focused, but it'll have the academics, but most likely will be within a college university setting. And then you have the BA program, which will be more academics and less on the studio practice part of it, but still a very valid, very strong program. The BA program may not have an audition component, while the conservatory absolutely will have,
right,
and the BFA program will also have. that.
So I'll tell you about two students I'm working with right now. I'm not going to say their first names because I didn't get their permission, but I'll give the initials. So there's a boy, we'll call him D for his first name. He's in New Jersey, very passionate about jazz music, and he plays the sax, and he spent the summer at Berklee College of Music for the summer. And he's been focused on this for a very long time and has a very lead role in a school with a really strong music program. And then another girl, Kay, in Delaware, she's got an excellent voice, but she's not doing the summer program. She hasn't even emerged as sort of that lead voice in her own school. What would be your thoughts about those two students? And sort of, I know you need to know more, but what are some initial impressions you have when I just based off what I've shared?
Well, for the student that has already kind of like done, got their sights maybe on someplace like Berklee, absolutely. I think that student is obviously chosen a good path. They know enough about themselves as a performer and what their interests are, and that is an excellent school to pursue, especially for jazz or even for the more contemporary music. They're an amazing program. Emerson, also in the Boston area, is also an excellent school too, for consideration, also for the theater students. But I move away from what the question is. So I think that's absolutely perfect. I would also encourage a student to look for other really strong jazz programs, because obviously a student has known enough about themselves as a performer and as a musician to understand the rigor and the demands of those type of experiences. For the other student, for the voice student, it sounds a little bit like she is discovering an emerging passion and an emerging talent in this area, but may not have the kind of, I guess, quote unquote resume yet that would warrant her. I mean, she could be a phenom and do remarkably well. But one of the things about voice students is they're often, especially in the audition process, they're often asked to sing in a language other than their own. French, Italian, German are usually the three areas. So if she's ready for that, then I would encourage her to pursue that. But she may be better for a BA program or even a university or college that has an outstanding music opportunities, even through just standard student organizations.
That's great.
That might be satisfying her passion and her needs without having to do it on an academic level.
I love that. And how do you recommend music majors evaluate a college? Like, what should they be looking at when they're trying to assess a college's program?
Wow. Yeah, I think that outcome is one of the things. Certainly, looking at the wide range, you want to see what their graduates are doing. They're going to be bragging about what their graduates are doing as well. So I would, certainly look for that. Or the other way around is you could also look at artists or performers that you admire and enjoy and are in awe of, and see what their backgrounds were. Where did they study? And use that as a guide, because you might be surprised that they may not have all gone to the most famous schools or the schools that everybody's talking about. You might be really surprised at some of the programs they've come from, because again, that talent is the thing that's going to get them to the success. It's not necessarily a school or that, but the connections happen. I would certainly encourage a visit and then see if they can have those opportunities to interact with current students. Either go to some of the student performances. A lot of times, even before the student has, they've scheduled their campus visit. Maybe they've been able to also schedule another visit with the music department or even with a faculty member in the discipline that they want to study. But they're also going to be, on the colleges or universities or even conservatory websites, they'll have the events that are coming up. Maybe coordinate the visit around some student performance that's taking place, and then you'll get a sense for some of that, the richness of their program, and if it's something that you want to be a part of.
That's great. That's great. And you mentioned the audition before. Any advice about the music audition for that our future musicians need to know about, or what wisdom can you bequeath to them when it comes to auditions?
Most likely it will include a music theory quiz. So they'll want to know what they know about the basic understanding of music. They'll probably in both, whether it's through voice or through instrumental, they'll be asked to sight read. So they need to be prepared for that as well. There'll be the etude and all the other, there may be some genre of music they want them to perform. They'll be communicating with them what their requirements are, but I think it would be to the students' benefit to already know how to do that stuff. We've had students come to we have a scholarship program called the Presidential Scholars in the Arts. And I've had students who are, they've gone through the entire application process. They've been communicated with throughout the process. They show up on the day of the audition and they go, I didn't know that there was going to be a music theory quiz. I've never taken a music theory course. And I was like, just do the best you can. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's all you can say.
Yeah. So, not doing it is not the answer. You need to be able to work through some of those challenges and do the best you can.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
For our recommended resource for episode 48, we're going to stick with the music theme and go with a book, an outstanding book. The name of it is Beyond Talent. And the subtitle of the book is called Creating a Successful Career in Music. This book can be purchased by Kindle, hardcover, paperback, or digital. There have been 6 versions of the book. It is by Angela Miles Beeching, and it's really a classic. One thing I like about the second edition of the book is it provides user-friendly real-life examples and perspectives on how to further your career in music. And this will apply to the veteran music career or to the rookie. There's a lot of step-by-step information from how to translate from college and to make the leap to your career in music. And the author, Angela Miles Beeching, is really a pro in this area. I just want to read to you just one of the reviews of the book. This book is a wonderful crash course and reference guide to making it as a freelance musician. I consider this a must-have for any aspiring professional musician. As someone who has been to multiple music schools and who makes a living as a violinist, I have to say the information in this book is just as important to a successful music career as is playing your instrument well. But this is the stuff they never teach you in music school. Some of the topics include how to write a business letter, how to create a website, how to create business cards, how to record a demo CD, how to network, how to fundraise, how to get promotional photos. You get the idea. So I recommend this book highly. Beyond Talent. I'll now resume my interview with Carol Conchar. Now let's talk about careers in both in music as well as particularly careers maybe that people haven't thought of, as well as maybe careers outside of music that if you've got musical background, musical training, it tends to correlate well with this particular thing that you've maybe watched and observed over the years. Anything come to mind?
Well, I think that for sure, becoming a private instructor would be one thing that a student can do post-graduation as they're finding whatever path they are going to be in. Being part of, the pit in a theater, who does musical theater, it's going to start at the very beginning. They're going to be performing probably in clubs in the evenings. They may be waiting tables just like our theater and our visual art friends do as well. It really depends on what their seriousness is. They will hold a day job until they get that, make it big in their career. It's definitely a dual personality because, you need to make a living, you need to be able to feed yourself, you need to pay the rent, but you have this passion and you have this drive. Don't give up on it. If this is what you want to do, even if you study biology and you still want to be in a rock band, you could still do it. It doesn't mean that what you study and who you are and all that. If the passion is there and the drive is there, you'll figure out how to make it happen. And you could still be an engineer by day and a rock musician or a jazz musician or a vocalist in a club at night, because it's still something you love to be a part of, and is who you are, the fabric of who you are.
Well,
so I think the careers can be widespread.
Thank you. And Carol, before we let you go, I want you to tell us a little bit more about George Washington and the program that you serve as the regional director for, because you've been doing this for 20 years. A lot of people don't know that GW's got some very, very, very strong arts options for students. My understanding is, didn't GW buy an arts college and take it over? Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the history of the program that you work with and the opportunities that are available for students? And feel free to, to go outside of just music and talk about sort of all the opportunities that are at the art school for GW.
Sure. So in 2014, the Corcoran College of Art and Design became a part of GW. They were primarily an art and design school. And then when they merged with us, they became one of our 7 undergraduate schools. They were actually a part of our liberal arts college, which is the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, which also has another smaller school, which is our journalism school, our School of Media and Public Affairs. So the Corcoran School became officially a School of Arts with an S and Design this past academic year, when our theater, dance, and our music program became a part of our other arts and design programs. So there are now 12 different major programs offered within the Corcoran School. And we offer Bachelor of Arts programs. We do not require an audition for our performing arts. We do require a portfolio for some of our Bachelor of Fine Art degree art and design majors, not all of them, but some of them. So a student can essentially come to GW with a desire for theater, dance, or music without having to audition. But we do have a scholarship program, and that is an audition-based scholarship program. It's called the Presidential Scholars of the Arts, and it's a 4-year program. What's interesting about the scholarship program, for a student who not only wants to say minor in music, but also has a passion for engineering or political science, things of that nature, they can do both. And we tend to see more students who are interested in minoring in the arts, the performing arts, audition and be selected for PSA, or that's what we call Presidential Scholars of the Arts, versus students who want to major. So the majors usually feel like, I'm getting enough of it, but for a minor, the scholarship program is perfect because it kind of gives them a little bit more than just being a minor.
That's fantastic. And if you could just share the website or any source that you recommend people go to learn more about George Washington's program, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. In general, if students have any questions, they're welcome to email me directly. My email is cconchar@gwu.edu. If they would like to learn more specifically about the Corcoran School, they can go to Corcoran, which is CORORAN.gwu.edu. They can read all about it there. It's a very old program, actually, over hundreds of years. And then they could also, just in general, check out GW, which is gwu.edu, and they'll be able to link right to the admissions website as well there. So we're located right in the heart of Washington, D.C., surrounded by amazing arts. The Corcoran School flag building, you are literally looking right up at the Washington Monument.
Nice.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carol, not only for coming on once, but twice in our inaugural year. So, and for Nika, my co-host as well, we just give you a big shout out for that. And we wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors.
Same. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and good luck to all the students looking into the arts.
Thank you.
Next week in the news, the problem with PLUS, how parents buckle under the weight of college debt. And we'll be in chapter 49 of 171 answers. And we're talking about how to use the SAT subject test to stand out. And next week's question is about which email students should use to communicate with colleges. And Mark interviews Rick Clark. He's the director of undergraduate admissions at Georgia Tech, and they're talking through the right way to handle deferrals, denials, waitlists, and acceptances. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you found this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that could really use this information. Your College Bound Kid is produced by John Lockenbaugh. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on the show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions with an S at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.